Welcome to Backpacker Radio, presented by The Trek. I am your co-host, Zach Badger Davis, and sitting to my right is...
It's Elise, or Sauce.
Elise, good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
It's been a minute since we've had you on the pod.
Yeah.
It's always good to have you back. Before we get to today's very foot-centric interview, I have a few reminders for you guys. First and foremost is Patreon. If you guys want to support this podcast and or want some additional juicy content, head on over to patreon.com/backpackerradio. We're actually going to be doing a new Patreon episode today with our guest co-host, Elise here. She recently went on... Actually, I'll just let you introduce it.
Yeah, well, I finally got my wilderness first responder training, which is something I've been talking about doing for years. And it's also recently come in handy. Unfortunately, it's like a skill you never really want to have to use. So I just feel like it's been very topical for me recently. And I think it'd be fun and helpful to kind of dive into what you learn in a woofer and why you might want to take one and why I think everyone should take one. And like what the cost looks like. We can talk about time commitment, all that kind of stuff.
Sweet. We have chatted about this none thus far, so I'm very excited to dive deep and learn all about it. But also we're doing longer interviews with guests on the Patreon channel. Got some fun bonus content, people chugging alcohol out of shoes and whatnot. So again, if you guys want to support the show and or you want some additional content, patreon.com/backpackerradio. Next is we're going to be at PCT Days. I guess as of the release of this podcast, we're just a few weeks away from PCT Days. So if you're going to be there, if you're currently through hiking the PCT and you want to be on the podcast, hit us up. We have the guest submission link available through the show notes. And last but not least this is probably going to be the last call that I'll do on the podcast for our new full-time position at the Trek. I've reduced the title some. Shout out to Oates, who gave me some feedback on that. Just down to marketing and community manager. It's possible that we'll shorten it even more once we onboard the new person. But if you've got some marketing and or ringleading chops, you've got some social media chops, some content generation chops, and you are an experienced backpacker, definitely want to check out this role. This has already been a popular one, and I'm expecting it to be very competitive, and I'd love for all the amazing, smart thru-hikers of the world to throw their hat into the ring.
And it's a lot of fun to work with Zach and for Zach. He didn't pay me to say that. He does pay me.
There's a gun pointed at her, though, so technically speaking, I didn't pay her. But, well, thank you, Elise. But, yeah, to that point, we are looking for somebody local or somebody willing to make the move to the area. So we can, I feel like things, as much as I love the remote work lifestyle, I think you're more productive in person. It's just nice to build a company culture where people can actually hang out and get to know each other. So, but we are accepting applications from people all over the country as well. I'm not going to be steadfast on the in-person thing. If the right person is elsewhere in the United States, I am open to consideration on that. Okay, that's it for today's reminders, and let's get right to our awesome interview with Dr. Courtney Conley. We are joined by today's guest, Dr. Courtney Conley, who's an internationally renowned foot and gait specialist, founder and creator of Gait Happens, and chiropractic physician who specializes in foot and gait mechanics. Dr. Conley holds a BA in kinesiology, a BA in human biology, and a doctorate in chiropractic medicine, and owns and operates the Total Health Solutions Clinic and Total Health Performance Gym just down the road in Lakewood, Colorado, where she heads patient care with a focus on restoring gait mechanics and helping people resolve foot problems to move more easily and with less pain. Dr. Courtney Conley, thank you so much for joining us here on Backpacker Radio.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Very close, too.
So close, yeah. Yes. Happy to make it convenient for you. As I mentioned before we hit the button here, I came across your interview on Dr. Peter Tia's podcast, which I thought was excellent. For anyone who's listened to that, this will be maybe a little bit redundant, but built more for the common man and woman, as that one was a little bit technical.
A little bit.
For at least my brain processing speed. Let's start off with, how does someone get into specialize in gait?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think with anything that people become passionate about, it comes from their own personal quest or personal experience. I was a dancer growing up. I spent a lot of time in point shoes, and then I switched gears and became a triathlete. So a lot of swimming, biking, and running. And over the years, I just never paid attention to my feet. And, you'd start to develop pain. I had bunions and neuromas. And so it kind of became a quest of mine to figure out what was going on. And so I went to chiropractic school. We had about half a semester of foot and ankle education. So I was like, man, this can't be it. And what we were really taught was if the foot hurts, to use an orthotic and or refer for surgery. Those were really the options. There were maybe some foot mobilizations, things like that, but there really wasn't a lot of education behind it. So when I graduated, that's what we did. I mean, I started my clinic, and we started casting a lot of people for foot orthotics. And I was doing it myself. I'm like, how can I fix, then my knee would hurt and my hip would hurt, and I'm trying to tweak my orthotics, and I worked in 2 orthotic labs, and I'm like, we need to start looking at the foot like we look at the rest of the body. And that's how I started to dive a little bit deeper into function and getting obsessed with watching how people walk.
Tell me about that process in terms of watching people walk. Do you have people in a lab and you're analyzing them on a frame-by-frame camera, or like what does that process look like?
Over the years, I've acquired a lot of tech, so computers and, lots of cameras. And to be honest with you, over the years, my iPhone has slow-mo on it now. So I just record patients and I slow everything down. And even when we teach our courses, you don't have to make things difficult. But I think watching people walk is a window to their mechanics. I always say it's like it takes you to the stadium but not to the seat. So you can really detect a lot of things.
Yeah. Is the slow-mo for you, or is it for them? Like, do you have such a trained eye now that you can tell what's wrong with someone's gait in real time, or do you have to have that slowed down video to be able to diagnose it properly?
It's for them.
Okay.
I mean, you always like to, confirm things and be like, oh, wow, look at this. But people really are interested in to see how they're moving and how they're walking. And I think it's important to note that not everybody should walk and look the same. I think our gait is very influenced by our environment, how we grew up, what activities we did. And I think the goal with gait assessment is, can we make this person more efficient?
Are you able to turn that off? Like when you're out on the streets?
That's what I was going to ask. Have you ever come across somebody in the wild and just been like, oh, they must have a collapsed arch or something?
It's the funniest question. I'm so glad you guys are both asking me that. My fiance lives in New York City, and it is like a playground for me because I'm just constantly watching. And Joe will always be like, you can't just leave them alone. They're probably happy. And I'm like,
but what if they're not?
I know. I'm like, but what if down the road, So, no, I cannot shut it off. Airport's another very favorite place of mine to hang out in.
Yeah. This is so fascinating. Obviously, I've got a billion questions.
What's like the easiest one to spot in the wild?
Oh, I think, when you watch someone walk, it should be easy. You should look at someone moving, and it should be graceful. It should look like they're not thinking about anything, that there's a smoothness. Their nervous systems look calm, because we as humans should be able to walk for very, very long distances. And so when you see people that look like they're struggling really in any capacity, whether that's biomechanical or even, if you get into the whole biopsychosocial component, you start to look and say, why are they struggling just to walk? And I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah. If you could snap your fingers and change one thing about the course of history to improve the most people's gait, whether that's changing shoes, removing desk work, like what's the number one culprit for bad walking mechanics in your opinion?
I mean, I'm a little biased because I'm so deep in the foot world, but the footwear has just, I think, really made a negative impact on our mechanics.
Okay, let's start there. I think this is obviously a very big question to uncover, but what about traditional footwear is off the mark?
You know, if you look at, I remember talking to Dr. Irene Davis, and she does a lot of research in this world, and she said, you know, if you look at running related injuries, you won't find a lot of research prior to the 70s on injuries related to, you know, repetitive running, things like that. And then all of a sudden you started to see these injuries pop up, and then all this research showing up, and, you know, there's this correlation between what started to happen then, and, you know, there's these tweaks in footwear. And I think when you think of the foot, it is our first and only connection with the ground. We have 200,000 receptors, muscle spindles, joint proprioceptors. I mean, the foot is dying to gain sensory information because it basically tells us how to become upright and a biped. Right? So it interacts with our vestibular system through these reflex loops, and we can walk. So when you think about that and you start interfering with that sensory input, you're going to start affecting how people walk and move. So whether that is, hey, I have too much cushion underneath the sole, for example, or if I were to take a shoe and instead of allowing my foot to be in its natural position, which is splayed, with the heel and the toe sitting on the same plane, and you start squishing the toes or a narrow toe box, you're literally changing the dynamics of the foot.
Even from there's so many different directions I want to go. Let's start with, you talked about the cushion.
Yeah.
So I've had 2 ACL reconstructions, and I'm working on the hypothesis that I have done a lot of hiking of late in Hokas, which are very highly cushioned, the speed goats in particular, thinking that more cushion was better for my knees, considering I was missing a good amount of my meniscus. Is that fact or fiction?
I think the whole cushion conversation is a very big misconception, because that, I think, is what most people think about, is if something hurts, I must need more cushion. But if you look at the research and what is now coming out there too, our heel, so I'm going to grab this is Eddie. I'm a big Pearl Jam fan, so, okay. Our heel bone was designed to feel the ground when we walk. You know, when the heel strikes the ground, it initiates pronation, which is the unlocking of the foot, shock absorption. So we need to be able to feel that. When I have too much stack height or cushion under the shoe, you start to change what we feel from the ground. So some of the things that can occur is an overstriding gait. So when we talk about stride, it would be when the foot reaches too far in front of the center of mass. So especially in a running gait, overstride, we always say, is the enemy. The further the foot strikes away from the center of mass in this heel strike, you have more ground reaction force going up through the knee and through the hip and through the back. So even if someone has, you know, a history of knee pain, they're like, well, I must need to get all this cushion. I'm like, let's not go with the cushion. Let's go with something where you can feel the ground. Their stride pattern changes, right? So they're not going to reach out in front of them because it would hurt, right? That's why this guy needs to feel. Because we wouldn't heavy heel strike in front of us, it hurts. So they start to adopt a different gait, which is softer. It's more of a grazing of the heel. It's closer to the center of mass, and that in turn changes the ground reaction forces going up through the rest of the extremity.
So to go to the other extreme there, if a lot of cushion can result in overextension, is then the correct way to go about getting proper foot mechanics to do more things barefoot?
Yes. And just to be clear, I always, I think this is an important thing to note, is I always preach about having a shoe spectrum. So when your foot is in a minimal shoe, or, and by minimal, that's not a lot of cushion, a heel and toe that sit on the same plane, wide toe box, more flexible, your foot has to work harder. There's more load through the muscles, through the tendons, through the bone. And people would say, well, that doesn't sound good. Well, that's how you get stronger. So that's a shoe that we like people to live in, right? This is where you're going to get stronger. So whether you're walking barefoot or you're walking in a shoe that has a lot of flexibility to it. But I always say, you have to earn your right. You can't just go in a Hoka with an orthotic and just say, you know what, I'm going to go now hike 10 miles in my new minimalist shoe because this is what I heard is good for me. So that's when that shoe spectrum becomes very important. It's we're going to dance along that line. Start with like 10 minutes, in a more minimal shoe. See how you feel. Feel good? Balance is better? Great. And then you just slowly start to add time. But over here, when you have that additional cushion, there's a time and a place. So
what is that time and place? Is that if you've got a lot of weight on your back, or in what circumstances would you recommend a more cushioned footwear?
So people, number one, who aren't used to living in a more minimal shoe, they'll come in and they'll be in a higher cushion shoe. So you don't want to, completely turn them off from the beginning. So if that's what they're comfortable in, I will keep the stack height of the shoe, but I will explain to them the importance of a wide toe box. So that's how we start to transition. Non-negotiable for me is a wide toe box. I'll play with the stack height. If someone's working in a grocery store, if they're standing on concrete all day long, if they walk in New York City and they're not used to that minimal shoe, then that's where the stack height can be nice because they have a little more underneath the sole of the foot.
Yeah. Anecdotally, I have started bartending and we are on a concrete floor, and I sprained my foot in like January, and I noticed I can't spend as much time in like Vans. My feet just start to ache. So I wear like Hokas to work a lot. And I'm wondering if you have any tips for how I can transition maybe away from wearing them as much without, like, could I switch footwear like halfway through my shift maybe?
Yeah. Okay. That's literally what I'll tell people to do. Bring another pair of shoes. Start with something that has more cushion, right? But get in a wider toe box. That's it's so important. The toes need to be able to splay. And there's a very big difference between a wide toe box and a wide shoe. They're not the same. So wide toe box, would be where the shoe is wide at the toes. Most companies have wide shoes where it's wider, where the metatarsals are. So then the toes still, the tip of the shoe still tapers. That's not a wide shoe. Your toes are still being wrapped with a rubber band. So if you're standing on your feet and you're bartending and your toes are still in this position, you don't have toe splay. Your balance is going to be affected. So you're just kind of making it harder on yourself.
Yeah.
So you could still keep the stack height of the shoe, just go with something with a wider toe box.
So amongst backpackers, Ultra is famous for the foot-shaped toe box. Is that their trademark? Yep. Yeah. In your opinion, what other brands have caught on to this?
Yeah, when this whole thing, when I first started getting into this, Vivo Barefoot was like the OG, They were the ones that kind of started with this whole, foot-shaped shoe. And there's been so many companies, which I'm very excited to see because I think this is hot. I think this topic is hot and people are starting to pay attention that you got to be strong from the ground up. So yes, Ultra has, their story is so great, but they're the zero drop wide toe box. Their shoes, especially for, through hiking, and they have some like the Ultra Lone Peak, the Olympus. I'm happy to talk about those later if you want. Topo Athletic, another brand that has a wide toe box. And they've danced along the 0 millimeter drop. They have a 3 and they have a 5. Ultra just added a 4 millimeter drop. But neither of those shoe companies go higher than 5.
Is 0 the gold standard or something that's minimal good enough?
If you look at the research when they talk about minimal shoes, you typically will say anything 6 millimeters and below. But
interesting.
When your foot is on the ground, it's on the ground. So you want the heel and the toe to be in the same plane.
For people who don't know what a millimeter drop is, can we go over
Yeah.
that really quickly? Because I have some friends who are like new to the backpacking world. I know
Good question.
that kind of goes over their heads.
Yeah, it's a great question. On most shoes, if you were to, when you find the model of the shoe and you Google, what is the heel to toe drop? So the heel to toe drop is how much drop there is between the cushion at the heel and at the toe. So, this is the Pursuit, Topo Athletic Pursuit. So this is 0 drop. So the heel and the toe, 0 millimeters, sit in the same plane. I don't think I have.
Shout out to the YouTube channel, by the way. We're getting
Yeah.
a visual demonstration on some of the more popular models here.
The Topo Athletic, the Traverse, which is like their highly recommended thru-hiking shoe, is a 5 millimeter drop. So the heel is 5 millimeters higher than the forefoot. So, in the minimal world, that technically is a high heel.
High heel. So should everyone be striving to get to 0, or is there a discernible difference between 0 and 3? If somebody's at a 3 and they have footwear that they like, should they feel good about that, or should they still be striving to get to something that is totally...
I mean, it's such a good question because, the literal question that I get every single day is, what shoe should I be in? And I think the answer to that question is always, what is the most comfortable for you? And I would argue that a shoe that is too narrow at the toes, once you start wearing a shoe that fits your foot, you do not want to go back. It's not a hard sell.
Yeah.
So, as far as the drop is concerned, like I said, the 0 drop is where you're going to work the hardest. Your foot's going to get stronger. You're going to, your gait is going to be its most efficient, but you do have to earn your right. If you're hiking up a mountain in a 0 drop shoe and your calf strength, for example, is not there, you're going to, call me the next morning and be like, I don't want to wear the 0 drop anymore because my calves hurt. And I'm going to say, that's not the shoe's fault.
What, you mentioned a shoe spectrum. Is it better for somebody to get, if they're coming from a 9 millimeter drop, I don't even know what the standard numbers are, but it's something in that range, and they want to get to 0, is it better for them to work slowly into the 0 drop, as you had mentioned, or to buy a 4 millimeter drop shoe, something that kind of splits the difference?
Yeah, it depends on how much money you're going to spend on shoes, too.
Yeah.
So if you're in a 10 and you want to start to, hey, I want to start to hike in a shoe that's more functional for me, go with something middle of the road. 3 mil, 4 mil, 5 mil. And then when you're home, walk around barefoot. Walk outside for 10 minutes, let your foot feel the ground. Do some foot exercises and then see how it feels. I always say, pay attention to what you're putting in the shoe. Because if you live in minimal shoe land, and let's say you want to go on a 20-mile hike, and you put on a 5 millimeter drop shoe, you're going to feel like you're on a jet engine. You're going to be like, wow, this doesn't even feel right. Because it's almost like, I call it like a cheat shoe. I went hiking in a 4 mil drop the other day, and I was like, I called my buddy at Ultra, and I was like, man, these things feel great. Because you now have a strong foot in a shoe that's going to
kind of assist
you a little bit. But, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it.
Yeah.
So if you live in footwear that doesn't let your foot bend, that has a very high heel to toe drop, that's going to squish your toes together, the strength of your foot will decrease.
And that leads to injury, right? And is that the main goal, is to reduce long-term injury?
And longevity. One of the things that I'm constantly, we have this little dynamometer in my office so you can test people's toe strength. Just fun facts. You should be able to press your big toe down 10% of your body weight and your 4 toes about 7 to 8%.
What does that feel like?
It's shocking how people so it's like a little credit card. You put it underneath the big toe and they press their big toe down and I get a number. A lot of my patients cannot even, if you were to do it at home, you put a credit card underneath the toe, don't let somebody pull the card out. If you can't grip that thing.
Interesting.
And toe strength is the biggest predictor of falls as we age.
Interesting. More than somebody's ability to do squats or deadlifts or something like that, toe strength?
because most falls happen with the initiation of gait. So if I was going to walk towards you, my toes press into the ground and I feel sensory information from my foot. As we age, we lose pressure, so sensitivity of those receptors, and we lose strength. So when I go to walk towards you, if I can't feel anything and I don't have good strength,
Yeah. Fascinating. So on the subject of strength, obviously you've outlined that going into more minimalist shoes will build a stronger foot. If somebody's preparing for a thru hike and they want the extra credit, should they be running wind sprints barefoot? Should they be doing calf raise? Like, what sort of thing should somebody be doing to maximize building a strong foot?
Yeah, there's so much, but we'll keep the priority here, because I don't think you want to overwhelm people with this either. It's like, we're all trying to be fit. So it's like, oh, one more thing. Now I have to do big toe exercises, right? So you got to meet people where they are. If you're very new to this, make sure you have good foot awareness or foot dexterity. So can you lift just your big toe? Can you lift just your four toes? Can you spread your toes? Can you balance for 10 seconds? If those things are difficult for you, then just do those things. But when we look at the loads going through the foot, so, if I was walking, I have 4 times my body weight going through my Achilles tendon. This is just, I walk to my car, 4 times my body weight going through my Achilles tendon. I also have 4 to 5 times my body weight going through different joints of my foot. So the outside of my foot, the talocalcaneal joint. So the foot was designed to handle a lot of load. If I wanted to run, my forefoot can take up my soleus, one of my calf muscles, can put up to 8 times my body weight through my forefoot. So when you look at what the foot was designed to do, you have to train it like that. So we can't just live in toe yoga land. You have to look at, how can I load this thing? I'm a very big fan of all things calf raises. There's some research out there that looks at, return to run, and the kind of baseline for the soleus, for example. So that's the calf muscle, powerhouse of the lower leg, was 1.5 times your body weight on a seated calf raise machine, single leg, 6 times. So think about that.
It seems like a lot.
It does seem like a lot.
It's a ton.
Yeah.
If you were to do it standing, so single leg raise standing, the baseline, right, or what they were looking at in this study was half of your body weight, 6 times. So just do the math. So hold a kettlebell, half your body weight, and do a single leg calf raise 6 times. I would argue that a lot of my patients can't do 10 single leg calf raises without any weight, just body weight. So that's a very low hanging fruit if we want to be hiking up a mountain.
Yeah.
You got to have calf strength. It's a non-negotiable.
For the people that you work with, who's your primary demographic? Are you dealing with primarily runners? Do you get a lot of backpackers?
Yes.
I know we're a small niche, especially like the long distance backpackers. There's not many of us, but I'm curious to know.
I love it though, because, I think a lot of us actually perform quite well. And then when you bring to light how much stronger you can get, because most people don't pay attention to their foot and calf strength. They just don't. It's like, I'd rather do squats and deadlifts.
Yeah.
So I kind of see people across the board, grandma who wants to walk around the block with her friends versus the professional athlete versus people that want to hike for days at a time. There's quite the spectrum there. And I think this whole industry is gaining more heat because, money talks. So these professional athletes now, if you look at the statistics of foot and ankle injuries, everything is skyrocketing. And I think it's because, we're getting bigger and stronger, but we're not paying attention to the foundation.
Yeah. This might just be because I'm entering into my later 30s and this is a common injury for that age range, but I feel like Achilles tears have been popping up more and more over the last like 5 years. Famously, Aaron Rodgers had a big one. A lot of athletes.
Yep.
One, do they seem like they're increasing, at least from your vantage point? And two, what's the thing that people should be doing specifically to prevent? Is that a flexibility thing? Is that too much weight? I guess I'd love to get your take on that.
I see tons of it. Here's the deal with tendons. As we age, they lose their stiffness, which might sound good. You're like, oh, that's good. That's not good. Our tendons have a stiffness to them so that when we're walking, they can make us efficient, like it's a recoil, right? You have this elastic spring that you want that spring. And the only way tendons stay healthy as we age is through load. So if we are not loading our Achilles tendon, or we're in poor footwear, or our foot's never, you don't pay attention to these things, and then you start to have pain in the Achilles, what most people will do is rest it. If it hurts, I'm just going to not use it. And it's going to feel better, right? My foot hurts, I'm going to rest, it's going to feel better. So rest isn't the enemy, you will feel better. The problem with resting a tendon is that when you go back to wanting to hike again, you're going to feel it, and it might come back with a little bit more of a vengeance because now you haven't loaded it at all. Mm-hmm. So tendons need load. So we'll start them with, things like isometrics. So in other words, a single leg calf raise, for example, holding it for 30 seconds. Then you start to get into adding weight. Plyometrics. Lots of jumping and lateral jumping and things like that, but there has to be that progression there. And I think that's really important as we age. I mean, there's a walking plyometric program that I love. It's like 3 exercises. So, people are like, I don't need to do plyometrics. I'm not, playing basketball or jumping. I'm like, yeah, but your foot's a spring. So you have to train it as such.
Yeah. Would you say that people who train plyometrics, I'm thinking of it now, I did a bunch of plyometrics when I played volleyball in high school, and I remember it went crazy on my vertical. Like I could jump like 3 inches higher after doing like a long series of intense plyometrics. Now I'm thinking about applying it to backpacking. Like if you happen to like stumble over a rock or something, would you say that it reduces your chances potentially of like twisting an ankle or things like that?
It's such a great question. I use the word injury prevention. Like it's tough, right? You could just have a bad day.
Yeah.
Right. But if you train movement variability, then you have those, you have less oh shit moments,
Yeah.
So if you train your foot in different positions, you train a lot of inversion or eversion, you train the foot to be resilient, to be able to handle different terrains, then yes, I think that you're more prepared for what is out there.
Cool.
You mentioned a 3, forget the terminology, series plyometric workout to strengthen the foot. What is that? So,
depending upon all the programming that you do with the patient is very individual to them first. But the walking plyometric, this is from Dr. Peter Malieris, and he's done a lot of tendinopathy rehabilitation research. So I really like his work. And this is a very 3 exercises. It's a heel to toe walk, right? So it's heel to toe on each side 20 times. A triple extension, so you kind of go into a squat, and then you reach your hands towards the sky and come up on your toes. So you're extending your knee and your hip. And that's like 3 times 6 or 8. Okay. And then you're skipping 20 times.
Skipping. So fun.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's like, why not do that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Where does more traditional strength training play a role in the health and strength of the foot? Like, could I get by with just doing squats and lunges and calf raises, I guess, would be one that you've mentioned that I think is considered a traditional workout. But yeah, what about the things that you see most people doing at the gym? Is that good enough, or should they be doing the more specialized stuff?
I mean, As my good friend Jay Cherry would say, you can't build a jet engine on a paper airplane. So you can do all the squats and the deadlifts that you want, but which I'm all for. The hip controls the foot, especially when the foot strikes the ground. It's the deceleration, right? We want to control pronation. We want to control the foot when it hits the ground. That comes from strength above the chain. So that's why you have to have strong hips. You have to do squats. You have to do those things. But when the foot hits the ground, you also have to have a foot that can handle that load. So, you got to go after it from both ends.
Speaking of lifting and everything, I know I've heard some discourse around wearing or not wearing shoes or wearing very minimal shoes while lifting. I'm assuming you would recommend that? Yeah.
I strength train probably 2 to 3 times a week, and my shoes are always off. If you think about it, especially from when you start adding heavier loads, you don't want a shoe that's going to dance underneath your foot. You want to feel the ground. You want a foot that's splayed, because you want to be able to press through the ground when you're coming up through a squat or a deadlift. So I am a very big fan of that. You'll see people, with their heels elevated, and, if you need to do that to get into certain positions to load the lower extremity differently, fine. But work on getting the heel down.
Yeah.
Because that means you just need better ankle dorsiflexion or better proximal stability.
Yeah. Would a old Ultra Lone Peak be as good or 90% as good as doing it barefoot, something that's zero drop that you've worn down the midsole on it? Or is there still value in having direct contact with the ground and getting that feedback?
I mean, there's a lot of companies out now that are making of minimal shoes to weight train in.
Yeah.
And I would just go with those. Because even a shoe, when the EVA materials start to break down in the sole of the shoe, even though it's old and you think it's like, just take it off. Because it's going to change how your foot feels the ground.
Yeah.
Just wear clean socks at the gym.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Or toe socks.
Yeah. Yeah, what's your view on toe socks?
Yeah, I mean, I probably haven't worn socks in 5 years because I just can't find socks that I like. My second and third, this is personal information here. My second and third toes are slightly webbed, so the toe socks don't work for me. But if I was going to wear a sock, it would definitely be the toe socks, because most socks are too tight. If you think about, even compression socks, you put your foot in that thing, it's like suctions your foot together. But that's why there's so many companies. Injinji, Creepers is a lot of my hikers love the Creepers because it's toe sock, merino wool, the foot can expand. So there's options out there.
Yeah. You don't wear socks.
No.
Not running, not doing anything like that.
No.
Blisters?
If it's real hot.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's real hot.
You must have very calloused feet.
Yes.
Like elephant skin.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're not. My daughter thinks, she's like, Mom, put those things away. But I'll go to get a pedicure, which is rare, but I'm like, do not touch my calluses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I've earned those.
It's like, I want them there. They're there for a reason.
Yeah. You mentioned your daughter. So we were chatting. I have 3 young kids at home. What things can I be doing with my kids to ensure that they grow up with healthy, strong feet?
It's such a great question. I think that's where it's at, is with the kids, because they haven't been on the planet long enough to really screw something up. And their little feet are screaming for sensory information. I mean, every baby on the planet, the first thing you'll see them do is take their socks and shoes off because they want to feel that input from the ground. So barefoot as much as possible. Obviously that's not possible when you go out, but there's lots of shoe companies now that are making shoes for kids, which there weren't before, that have the toe splay, that are flexible. Even Nike came out with the toddler shoe. I think it was this year, and it was funny because in their research, when they were talking about the shoe, they're like, we've done the research and we've made a shoe that helps child development. It's flexible. It has a wide toe box, and listing all of these characteristics. I'm like, yes, so let's just keep doing that.
Yeah.
right?
So in addition to Nike, are there any specific brands or models that
Oh,
you
yeah.
want to give shout out to?
Yes, so many. So Splay makes really good kids shoes.
Start
They're
texting my wife right now.
yeah. On our website, I have a favorite products section, and it'll be like casual shoes, kids shoes, sandals, and then there's just a list of footwear.
Okay.
So it's a great resource for all things foot related.
And that's gatehappens.com?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And is the product recommendation easy to find from the homepage?
Yep. Just go to shop and then under favorite products, and then there'll be all the different shoes there.
Sweet. Great.
You'll spend, you could spend hours looking at all that stuff.
Yeah.
Really important for the kids, though.
Yeah. For kids, are there less considerations in getting the correct shoe to match them? To your point, like they haven't messed things up. I guess it depends on how old the kid is, obviously.
Yeah.
But like, I know fitting footwear to an adult, they've had a long time to mess things up. For kids, is it more?
You have two characteristics: make sure it's wide enough, and make sure it's flexible.
Okay.
And here's the interesting thing with the kids: if you look at the research on children and shoe sizes, I think it's like 65 to 70% of kids are in the wrong size. And so I always tell my parents, the kids aren't going to tell you that their shoe feels tight, and they're going to grow out of them in like 3 months.
Yeah.
So they're running around in a shoe that's too small for their foot. So then their toes end up curling, and they don't tell you because why would they? So just stay on top of the right size shoe because their feet are growing rapidly. And the last thing you want is for a shoe that's too small.
Yeah. There needs to be like Netflix, like the original rental version of Netflix.
Shoes.
Yeah, because you grow
Yeah.
out of them so quickly. It's
Yeah.
like you're reluctant to buy anything because
Mhm.
in 20 minutes doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah.
Which is probably the reason why kids are in too small of shoes is because like I just bought you
Yeah,
shoes.
right.
Yeah.
You're like, you can't possibly need another pair of shoes. You're like, yes.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
grow out before they wear out.
Yeah.
Most
Yeah.
likely.
We have to talk about it. I'm sure the answer is implied based on what we went through already, but some people swear by their hiking boots.
Yes.
Is there ever a situation where somebody that loves their hiking boots should just remain in their hiking boots? Like we interviewed someone recently. She had mentioned that she's sprained her ankle so many times, like she doesn't even have the tendons there anymore, and she feels like she needs the ankle stability to even be able to hike. Is that a scenario where a hiking boot does make more sense?
At the end of the day, you want people walking, right? Like you want people to be outside, you want them enjoying being outside, and you want them walking. But if they feel that the shoe is what's necessarily keeping them stable, you have to have a long conversation with them and say, listen, there's probably other things we need to be doing as well.
Mm-hmm.
If that hiking boot is like a neurological hug for them, then wear the hiking boot. But you're going to be doing these things to try to build the stability of your ankle and build the strength of your foot, because I do not think that people need a hiking boot to hike. It's no, go ahead.
I was going to say, is there any stability that comes from it? Even though it might not be good for you long term, is there actual like stability that's
I mean,
created,
you
or-
have a thick boot around your ankle, right?
Mhm.
So it's probably, I mean, I don't know from a research perspective if they've looked at enough, like, hey, if you wear this boot, how much more stable does
Yeah.
it make your foot?
I was just curious. Yeah,
But-
does it actually impact?
I would say, as I always do, let the shoe be like icing on the cake. You shouldn't think, let your foot and ankle be so strong that when you put your foot into that shoe, it's just, smooth sailing.
Yeah.
But the shoe should not be your, I need to wear this shoe so I can hike.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with the research that was the origin of the phrase that a pound on your foot is worth 5 in your pack? Like I think wasn't that like a military study where they found that was actually the equivalent? If you had an extra pound on your foot, it was the equivalent of carrying 5 extra pounds on your back.
No, I haven't heard that.
Oh, okay.
But
'Cause-
I'm curious.
Yeah, it's a common backpacker phrase, and I just assumed like somebody pulled a number out of their butt, but I think that there is actual research behind that. I was
Yeah, I'm not
curious.
familiar with that research.
Yeah. So with the backpackers that you worked with, what are the most common issues that you see? What are they coming to you for?
I think probably the most common one is heel pain. Plantar fasciitis, plantar fasciopathy. And it's really interesting to me because if you think of the plantar fascia as a continuation of the Achilles tendon, right? So you have the Achilles tendon, then the calcaneus or the heel bone kind of floats within that tendon, and then you have the plantar fascia. We've already talked about how Achilles tendons need load. So does the plantar fascia then not also need load? And I would argue, yes, it does. One of the biggest predictors of heel pain is a weakness of one of the intrinsic muscles of the foot, flexor digitorum brevis. So it runs parallel with the plantar fascia. You can test that muscle by that 4-toe test I was telling you about. So when you see that muscle's weak, I like to call the plantar fascia and that muscle, they're like best friends. They work together. If one of them is not helping the other one out, you're going to have problems. So when we think of patients that have heel pain, it's always, here's an orthotic. Let's get a real cushy shoe. And I think in the early stages, when it's an itis, an acute inflammatory response, then yes, an orthotic is a load modifier. Take the load off. Wear the shoe that's going to have less load. But you better be focusing on what's causing this in the first place, and that doesn't mean you wear this orthotic for the next 20 years. It means get your foot stronger. And I actually love treating heel pain because we have to take a different approach to it. There's a really cool study right now looking at, it was already published. It was a small cohort, so like 20 people. But they all had chronic heel pain. And they took these people and had them run barefoot on grass. I think it was 15 minutes twice a week. 19 of the 20 people reported with less heel pain. And people are going like, gosh, for so many years we've been talking about more orthotics and more stiff shoes. And it's like, no, the foot just needs to get stronger too. So when treating those things, you start with, okay, do we need to modify load? Does this person need an orthotic? I'm not anti-orthotic, time and a place, but I don't think you need to stay in that thing for longer than necessary. And then as the foot starts to get stronger, you start to remove the orthotic. You remove the shoe that's, supporting them. And then you start to see the results that you're after.
Is there any harm in like powering through without an orthotic? Like if you feel like, yes, I have pain, but it's not preventing me from doing things, would you recommend they still?
Oh, that is so loaded.
It's such a thru-hiker question because we just want to keep going even if we're in pain. We're like, just tell us we won't need surgery if we keep walking on this and we're gonna go.
Pain is such a poor objective measure, right? Because you could have a bad day and your pain's a 10 out of 10. So you have to kind of think about other things to think about. Okay. If you look at your foot, for example, if you're like a post-tib tendon, or if you're looking and you see acute symptoms like it's swollen, it's red, you got to say, okay, like I should probably back off a little bit. Assess how you feel that night and the next morning. No matter how long you're on your feet, things should settle down, and you shouldn't be, it's getting worse, it's getting worse, it's getting worse. So, those are all things I think that you have to consider. Powering through an acute injury, but a lot of the times the more chronic injuries, you have to treat those a little bit differently.
You use a word that I would not be able to repeat even if you told me 100 times, but the muscle that parallels the plantar
flexor digitorum brevis.
Yes. Yep, so long.
100 times I would not even get close. Is there a specific workout that someone should use to strengthen that, given that plantar fasciitis is so common, or is it the things that you had already outlined previously?
I mean, to start, for starters, I'll just take a TheraBand, put it at the heel, and then put it's almost like you're doing a bicep curl, but you're doing it with your 4 toes. So then you press the toes into the band. I can send you videos of any of this that you'd like. There's a great device that I use with a lot of my hikers. It's called a Toe Pro, and it's like a foam pad. And you can do calf raises and toe strength right on there. And it adds a resistance component to it due to the resistance in the foam. Also awesome. You know, so it's just like little things that really go a long way.
Yeah. I hope people put a pin in that part, because with my anecdotal experience as well, plantar fasciitis definitely seems like the thing that takes people off trail. Very popular guy in this podcast, Jabba, has been taken off of, I think, multiple thru hikes by plantar fasciitis.
Yep.
Once you start
calf strength too.
Calf strength?
It's load, right? So, you know, you have to strengthen the foot, strengthen the calf. Make sure you have good ankle mobility too. That's where most people with plantar fasciitis or fasciopathy will have stretched their calves till they're like blue in the face. You know, they're like, I've been stretching for 10 years. You know, static stretching gets a bad rap. I don't think people hold it long enough. I mean, when you look at some of the research on static stretching, you're looking at like 3, 4, 5 minute static holds.
Does it have to be in one go, or could that be cumulative, like 30-second sessions to get to 4 minutes? Okay.
Yep.
Wow. That's a lot of stretching.
If my patients need good, better ankle mobility, it's 5 minutes in the morning or 5 minutes at night.
Oh.
Working up to that. I'll also have them slightly point their toes in and kind of on a slant board so that they're elevated a little bit. But the toes in gets part of a belly of the gastroc that tends to decrease dorsiflexion more. So that's why that can be powerful.
So obviously an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of the cure, but people tend to be lackadaisical when it comes to preparing for stuff.
Yep.
A little bit of an invincibility complex, especially in thru hiking. Most people are very young and usually don't deal with stuff before they leave. Once you start to notice pain with plantar fasciitis, is there a protocol that they should follow to ensure that they're not making it worse or overcome it while they're out on trail? Or is it like, is their fate starting to get sealed that you just can't do big miles once the issue has popped up?
I mean, pay attention. You know, if you start, especially if you have an experienced foot pain and you start to notice something, that's like, hey, I should probably start doing something here. And that's when you start with, you know, calf mobility, some foot strength, just like those toe drills that we were doing, some calf raises. But start then. And then, you know, you really have to continue to pay attention. I mean, it's a lot of load through the foot.
Yeah. So if they notice something, 5 minutes of stretching in the morning and 5 at night.
Yeah, just keep it simple in the beginning.
Yeah.
You know?
Can you talk about how plantar fasciitis typically presents? Because I think sometimes when people start thru hiking too, it's harder to distinguish between, is this just I've increased my activity a ton and my feet are aching, or is this an injury I need to be apprehensive of?
So plantar fasciitis typically will be pain after rest. So like in the morning when because your tissue's kind of in a relaxed position. And then when you go to load, that's when you can start to get that pain. That's why it's tricky when you're hiking, because you're like, oh, it was sore this morning, but I was able to hike all day and it was fine. You know, and then you go to sit down at camp at night and then you try to get up and walk again and you're like, oh. You got to pay attention to those things. You know, if you have a history of that, there's no harm in carrying like an over-the-counter orthotic or something that you can put underneath your foot to modify the load if you're out there. But know that you need to, you know, if you are going to go and hike miles and you're not either A, used to it, or B, don't have the strength and capacity in your foot, you got to prepare for that stuff. Because you hear it all the time. Everything was fine, and then I went on a 10-mile hike and my heels started hurting. I got load on my back, and I don't have the strength from the ground up. So, I mean, I think everybody listening to this is don't wait till it happens. Just start doing it now.
In addition to strength exercises or stretching, are there certain things that people could do to help their feet recover in terms of icing, heat? I don't even know what else there could be, but I'm sure there are other modalities. Do you have recommendations for either a hiker, runner, any sort of endurance athlete?
Yeah, I mean, you know, in office treatments, I like shockwave to the plantar fascia. Dry needling is good for the tissue. You know, any type of ball work. They have balls now that vibrate and heat up. That heat is so nice, especially if you can hit the bottom of your foot before you take the first step in the morning. Because the first step in the morning when you start irritating the heel, so like even before you get out of bed, like stretch the calf, do some mobility into the calf, you know, roll your ankles around, things like that. The other big one too is big toe mobility. So like, you know, if you're sitting at camp, take a little ball, it doesn't weigh much, and you can just put it underneath your big toe and just let your big toe stretch for a couple minutes, and that will stretch that medial band underneath the foot, which typically is where you're going to see a lot of those symptoms pop up.
So if you could design a protocol without knowing the individual and their particular proclivities toward a certain injury, if they had 30 minutes to allocate to injury prevention while out on trail, what would you...
Like while they're out there or preparing for it?
Let's do both. Let's start off with somebody that's already on trail listening to this in the middle of their thru hike that wants to take better care of their feet. If they had 30 minutes, say 15 in the morning, 15 at night, or I guess break it up however you'd like, what would you recommend?
Okay, so they're already out there. You're taking your shoes off. If you have anything to roll the bottom of the foot, I mean, I'll be out there and I'll like find a rock or anything to just kind of mobilize the foot. I'll interlace my fingers like within my toes, so you get that toe splay, and then you can just roll the foot around, because that will get some of that splay, especially after you've been in a shoe for X amount of hours. When your fingers are in between the toes, I'll take my other hand and massage in between those bones on the top. That tissue will often be very, very tender. So just that like good mobility work at the end of the day, calf mobility, those stretches that we were talking about. And then to kind of prep your morning, wake up the feet, like toe yoga, big toe lifts, 4 toe lifts, lift all the toes, spread them, reach them forward, you know, and a couple calf raises. So I would do like morning kind of prep the foot, and then at night you want to kind of, you know, mobilize it, focus on tissue recovery. If you're not out there and you're planning on it, almost, you know, because you'll have more resources, you have to load. So if you're going to be hiking up and down with a lot of vert and you have to have the strength to go up and you have to have the strength to control the down. So body weight isn't really going to cut it. You're going to have to amp it up a little bit. So I always say, especially with foot and ankle stuff, don't miss gym day. Or get creative and hold something with a single leg calf raise. Do a seated calf raise. Work on balance. That's a big one, you know. I'll tell my patients, like, you know, when you're brushing your teeth, balance on your right foot for a minute and balance on your left foot for a minute. Because that proprioception is important to feel.
Yeah. What about preventing another very common thing, ankle sprains?
Yeah. It's really, I mean, I think we kind of make it harder than it's supposed to be. The thing with ankle sprains is when your foot hits the ground and you sprain your ankle, even if you have ligament tears, the ligaments heal. But what doesn't is the nervous tissue when you either stretch or tear the nervous tissue. So you start to lose the sensation of what the foot feels like, right, when it hits the ground. So you have to restore those motions. So you have to work on balance. You have to work on strengthening the big toe, right? So here's my foot in this more inverted position. Unfortunately, when you start spraining your ankle, your foot stays more in this position. So when you go to strike again, that's why people just keep spraining their ankle. But being able to find the big toe, see what that does to the foot, right? It takes me out of inversion and it what we call everts, or brings me to my big toe. So a lot of the drills that we do with patients that have multiple ankle sprains is rehabilitating the big toe, getting them to find their big toe again.
So if somebody has a long history of ankle sprains, can they get back to 100% strength in their ankle?
I mean, sure. It's just like anything else, but you have to train it.
Yeah.
But, you know, ankle sprains can be an issue. I always say I'd much rather see a severe ankle sprain. I want somebody that had a severe sprain, even an avulsion fracture, because what are they going to do? They're going to boot it. They're not going to walk on it. The foot's going to heal. We're going to rehab it. It's the mild ankle sprains where people are like, it's okay, I can continue walking on it, right? And if you're out there, do not, like, I was hiking longs and a friend of mine was in front of me and we were on the narrows and I saw his foot like,
Oof.
you know, and I kept thinking to myself, I really hope he doesn't take his boot off when he gets to the top because he was so far in front of me. And as soon as we got to the top, I was like, this is going to be a long trek down because his ankle was literally out to here, you know?
So you wanted him to keep it on to prevent the swelling?
Keep it on.
Yeah.
Just keep it on, you know?
Yeah, I was thinking when you mentioned to get over a sprain to rediscover the big toe, I was thinking in my head, like, should you be doing the mobility exercises right away? But it sounds like maybe keeping the shoe on is the right way to go about.
I mean, in the boot, you could think about like just trying to lift the big toe, right? I would be doing like little circles. Like you want that thing to move, right? You just don't want to take the boot off because the whole thing will swell.
Yeah.
But keep that thing moving as best you can. Yeah, the other injury that we'll see a lot of are stress fractures.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting when you look at the treatment of stress fractures because depending upon where they are in the foot, you need to know that because they're treated differently. So a stress fracture in like the heel or sometimes in the outer fifth metatarsal, you'll often find more of those with people that have a real stiff foot, the high arch, because they don't have good shock absorption. So they just come in hot and heavy all the time and they start to get repetitive, compressive loading through the bone. So with those types, you have to, stack height, right? You want some cushion. But when you look at stress fractures in the second metatarsal, third metatarsal, so in these bones here, sometimes you'll see them at the navicular, the sesamoid, lots of sesamoids. Those are not from compressive loading. Those are what we call tensile strain stress fractures, which means that when the foot hits the ground, it can't control rotation. So the foot comes and it has all this spin to it. It doesn't have strength. So you start to tug, so it gets this tensile strain tugging at the bone. You can't just boot that thing. That's a foot screaming at you going, please get me stronger. So you really need to pay attention to the location of the stress fracture. And for the majority of patients that I see, it's a result of, I don't really have good control of my foot. And when it hits the ground, I'm speeding through pronation, or I don't have the strength to decelerate my motion. And then I start to get this repetitive kind of tug.
So obviously, as you mentioned, a weak foot causes a myriad of foot injuries. Can a weak foot also cause issues upstream? Like, is a weak foot going to make you more likely to injure your knee or your hips, or like where does that end?
A great question. I mean, think about it if you were walking. Because I'll see patients all the time. If they have poor plantar flexion strength, so that's the push-off phase of gait, people are still going to get from point A to point B. They're just going to cheat the system. And, compensation isn't a bad thing. It's just, eventually it's going to catch up to you. It'll get you, going. But eventually, when you're not moving efficiently, something's going to catch up to you. So if you don't have appropriate push-off from your foot, for example, you might have to lift your hip. Or you might, when your foot's on the ground, tilt in different planes. And those will all take an effect up the kinetic chain. I think another good example is mobility at the big toe. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's the most important joint in the body.
It keeps coming up. Yeah, I'm going to start going home and working on the strength of my big toe, which I had never even considered.
Seriously, it's literally, it carries so much of our strength in our foot. And at push-off, in a normal walking gait, we want to have about 40 to 45 degrees of range of motion at the big toe. If I was sprinting or running, I'd want like 60, 65. But the one diagnosis that will literally stop my hikers in their tracks and they'll be like, cannot do it, is when they start to have arthritic change at the big toe. Because if he doesn't extend, one of the first things you'll see is a shortened stride because they can't push off. So it's like now they just have this shorter step. Or because they can't push through the big toe, they'll land really heavy on the other side. So they'll tell me they have like opposite leg knee pain or hip pain. It's extremely important. And then if they start to get arthritic change at the toe, so I'm talking hallux limitus, hallux rigidus as a diagnosis, they have to either get into some type of shoe that is so stiff at push off because the toe won't bend. So you have to almost rocker them through the foot. And, you know.
Is there any like rehab process for that, or is it kind of like that's something that
I always tell people, if you think there's anything going on with your big toe, go get someone to look at it. Because if you catch it in an early stage in what we call functional hallux limitus, a lot of the times it's also very common with people with ankle sprains. Because, I'm going to get a little technical here, okay? When people sprain their ankle, one of the muscles that go under dysfunction is the peroneals. So those are the ones that sit on the side of the leg. When peroneus longus is doing his job, he drops the big toe to the ground so that my big toe can extend. So I get good dorsiflexion out of my big toe. If that muscle is weak or he's not doing what he should, because I have multiple ankle sprains, and he doesn't drop down, when I go to push off, you see how that would like pinch the top of the toe? And you start to piss him off, he gets red, he gets arthritic, and you got problems. But if you catch this early enough and you start to strengthen the peroneals, for example, and you start to mobilize the first met, and you can get that to the ground, then these patients, it's wonderful. But you got to catch it early enough. Because once that toe starts to get, aggressive arthritic change, I mean, it affects your life. You can't walk. So that's when we got to look at foot rockers. It's not I always say, there's always something that can be done, but just do the best you can.
Yeah. It seems conceptually that, I remember, what was it, like 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more, that the Vibram 5 fingers were all the rage. And then they disappeared. I think they got sued for something. I'm sure you could probably tell me all about it. Is a shoe like that a good idea? And does that exist today? Yeah,
I mean, they're making a comeback.
Are they?
And, we don't have to get into the issues with that lawsuit. Steven Sashin, the owner of Zero, kind of explained that very well. And it wasn't actually that anybody got injured from that shoe. It was just there were medical claims that couldn't be supported. So that was kind of a big deal, because once that shoe came out, everybody was like, oh, these shoes are terrible, and it was just really miscommunication. And they are making a comeback now. There's a company called Paluva that's actually like, the toe shoe again. But people are recognizing the importance of getting stronger from the ground up. And I think the easiest, if you were to just wear a minimal shoe, do nothing else. If you wear a minimal shoe and do nothing else, there's muscles in the foot that have shown to hypertrophy just by wearing a minimal shoe, because your foot can splay and you're using your foot differently, which I think is awesome. So what a low-hanging fruit. And then you add a minimal shoe and you do a couple exercises.
I remember I had the Vibram 5 finger back in the day. I thought they were cool. Felt like Spider-Man or something.
I think they're cool.
Yeah. Should people avoid running in something like that? Because I remember I would go for runs. And in hindsight, now with bad knees, maybe not the best decision. But is that something that you would turn people away from? Or does it depend on the surface they're running on?
Yeah, it depends on where they are. If they have a really strong foot and strong calves, running in with minimal material and shoe under your foot, you're going to have a different gait pattern. So, and could be a very long topic. When you run in a more minimal shoe, it changes your gait pattern to more of a midfoot, forefoot strike. Right? You're not going to land heavy on the heel. So when you have that midfoot, forefoot strike, it's an efficient running gait. So for those with knee pain, it's great, because when you run on your forefoot and your midfoot, it takes load out of the knee and the hip, or transfers it, if you will,
Yeah.
into the foot and ankle. So it's not that when people are like, heel striking is bad. It's not bad if you have an Achilles tendon issue, because when you heel strike, it puts the load through your knee and your hip. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. When you're midfoot, forefoot strike, you put load through the foot and ankle. So the strike patterns, all they simply do is change load. I do think that having a midfoot, forefoot strike is a more efficient, people probably get upset about this, but it's just, it's what the person feels the most comfortable doing. And, changing people's running gait people won't like you if you screw up how fast they are.
Yeah. I've gotten advice to shorten my stride, which I'm fine with because I don't care about how fast I am. But they were like, you might be a little slower, but it's going to be better for you. And I'm like, I don't care. I'd rather not have pain. So,
yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, if we could pick what we're running in, I'm running in a minimal shoe. I'm running with a high cadence. I'm running, a nice, strong midfoot strike, Mm-hmm. And you just, again, you have to work with people with where they are, because if you can't do 20, 25, 30 single leg calf raises and you're running around in a minimal shoe, you don't have the capacity.
Literally, what are you running in? What's your footwear of choice? I imagine you've got different tools in the toolbox.
I do. When I'm on the road, I like the Escalante Racer, so the Ultra Escalante Racer. It's one of their smaller stack height shoes. I like the Zero HFS, so that's a kind of a real minimal shoe, my shorter runs. And then when I'm on the trail, I like the Lone Peak.
Do you have strong thoughts of, I guess this is more like fabric technology as opposed to like the actual mechanics of the shoe, but we were chatting before I hit record that I've started to test the Topo Athletic shoes, and I really like them.
Yeah.
Based on the recommendation from people saying that they find them to be more durable than Ultras. Do you have a strong thought on one brand versus another in terms of long-distance backpacking?
I mean, those are probably my two favorite companies, Ultra and Topo. They have the wide toe box. They have the variation. Well, Topo has the variation in the 0, 3, and 5. They have really good lines as far as like hiking, trail, road. I've actually put a little document together for you guys of like the top 3 hiking shoes for both Topo and Ultra, as well as Zero and Vivo. So I can give those to you, and it'll give you the specs of everything. But I think it's important to know what you're looking for in the shoe. Like the Topo Traverse is a 5mm drop, so it's going to give you a little bit of the drop, but it's stiffer. It has a rock plate. It has a midsole that's stiffer. So, that's going to be a good, what I think, kind of entry. If you're trying to get into a more functional shoe, that's a great shoe. When you move into the Pursuit, this is a 0 drop. So if you're not used to hiking in a 0 drop shoe, this is just a different world, and don't be surprised when you're like, wow, my calves hurt, because that can happen. And it doesn't mean get rid of it. It just means pay attention to your calves. Mm-hmm. And then they have the Terra Venture. So those are their top kind of 3 hikers. But that shoe has the least amount of stack height. So that's going to be for someone who wants to feel the ground a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a recommendation for something that I notice on thru hikes a lot is I get this whole foot ache at the end of the day. It's not necessarily any sort of pinpointed pain. It's just my feet just ache from being on them all day. Is that something that would be solved through a shoe, or is that
my first reaction would be get your foot stronger? Okay. It's tired. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, your foot's tired. I'm a big fan of these things. Right?
What is that?
This is a toe spacer.
Okay.
Right? I wear mine the only time mine aren't on is when I'm sleeping. So I'll hike in these. I run in these because it keeps my toes splayed, and then they also it's strengthening your foot. But if you don't want to hike in these, because some people aren't comfortable with them, when you take your shoe off, put them on.
Okay.
Let your toes splay. You know, that would be a good option. But when your feet feel achy and crampy, pay attention to them, because they're probably telling you that they need a little more love.
Yeah, it usually gets worse like towards the end of through hikes, I've noticed, and like the ends of long days. Like if I try and do a 30-mile day at like in the last 1,000 miles of a through hike, that's when it gets the worst.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just assumed that was inevitable. You're saying that potentially it's not. Like if you got your foot strong enough, you could potentially go 24 hours of backpacking without getting that like barking sensation.
Does other parts of your body get tired?
Yeah.
Many.
You know? I mean, pay attention to those things.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, let your body be your kind of diagnostician. You know, pay attention. Like there's certain assessments that we'll do, and when people are like, you know, grabbing their hamstring or grabbing their calf, I'm like, just, it's probably telling you we need to pay attention to this. You know, at the end of your hike, is my right foot sore more so than my left? Is my right hand, you know, pay attention to those things, and then, you know, bring it home and do a little bit of work.
Yeah. That toe spacer thing, is that something that somebody could just get on Amazon, or where should somebody go to get that?
I have in the show notes, we have links to those too.
Okay.
So yeah, these are, it literally is like one of the easiest things to implement. It's also, you got to break them in, because people that have very poor toe splay, they can't even, they have to like move their toes to slide this thing on, because they can't spread their toes. You know, when the toes start rubbing, they'll be like, oh, that hurts. It'll form a callus or a corn on the inside of the toe. It's because there's friction there, because your toes aren't splaying. So I tell people, 10 minutes, walk around your house, 10 minutes with the toe spacer on barefoot. Especially if they have a history of bunions, neuromas, where the foot has started to, that's the beautiful thing about the foot, right? Because it's the only place in the body where you can see aberrant load. Like if you see a bunion or a hammer toe, you should probably be asking yourself, why is this happening? And it's not because your grandma has one. Okay, we'll just throw that out there. But
so it's not just a genetic thing.
No. You inherit connective tissue laxity, right? You inherit these kind of genetic components. But I truly think that if we know that going in, do something about it. It's like, we know your grandfather has heart disease, so I'm probably going to watch my diet, or I'm probably going to exercise more. You know your mom has a bunion, so pay attention to those things.
Yeah. So any other gizmos or gadgets? You mentioned having like a ball for somebody to roll out, a lacrosse ball or like a cork ball. Like, is there a go-to?
We have these, like, this is like what I've wanted to do to make it simple for people. So we have this like it's a foot health kit, and it's literally, there's a band in there, there's balls in there, there's a toe spacer in there, and then I've designed these toe strengtheners. You know, like rock climbers, you'll see those like rubber bands around the hands, and they're constantly like stretching or strengthening their hands. I designed one for the toe, because my daughter's a rock climber, and I'm like, why doesn't anybody have one of these for the toes?
Yeah.
So I designed those. So it's like, wear the toe spacers, do some banded toe exercises, roll the bottom of your foot and strengthen the toes. And it's in like this little convenient kit, so you can just take it everywhere.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make it easy for people.
Yeah. That's awesome. And that's at the website as well, I imagine.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that I'm missing? Any questions that we should be asking that we've skipped over in terms of?
You guys really hit it all. I mean, I think, you know, just to keep it simple, because this is a lot of information, you know, but I can't stress how important it is to get stronger from the ground up, especially for the lifestyle that people listening to this want to lead, and also for longevity. You know, when you can't walk, it's one of the reasons I got into all of this, is because it not only affects your physical health, but, you know, I use walking and hiking for my mental sanity.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking to me when people can't do that because their feet hurt. And once it starts, you know, because I think there's such a lack of education out there, and then the solutions have been orthotics and surgeries. And once you start going down those roads, it's kind of, it can be difficult to come back from. So I'm just like all in this. I want to educate people as much as I can, because getting a shoe that makes your foot work a little harder, wearing a toe spacer, paying attention to just a couple little things will be so significant in the long run.
Shifting gears again. Are there any Hokas that you can genuinely recommend, or is it just that entire...
That's how I'm on the same page.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want the stack height of the shoe, and that's what you're after because you like the cushion, I always go with the Ultra Olympus. It's a wide toe box shoe. It has the same stack height. Now, it's a 0 drop, but because there's so much stuff underneath the foot, I've never had a issue taking somebody from a Hoka into an Ultra Olympus. And if they're running in it, we'll just take it slow. But that's when I always say the toe box for me is a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
So I'm always going wide there.
So you don't think that Hoka makes any toe boxes that are suitable in your opinion?
I mean, here's the easy way to do this. Take out the factory insert, put it on the ground, and stand on it. If your foot is extending beyond the factory insert, you can probably be pretty certain the toes are getting squished.
That's a great rule of thumb for like any shoe you're shopping for, I would imagine, even like day to day, if they're not tennis shoes or running shoes.
Yeah.
And some of these companies are getting smarter because they're making the upper of the shoe, so the upper is like this part, right? Like meshy, or so when you put your foot in there, it can kind of expand a little bit. But there really is a very big difference between wide toe box and wide shoe.
I anecdotally on the PCT wore a hole in every single pair. I wore Sauconys at the time, and they just weren't wide enough for my feet. I literally my pinky toe would wear a little hole just right at the edge, and then my pinky toe would just splay out until I got new shoes. For like 400 miles, because it would happen within like the first 100 miles.
I mean, it's pretty wild to me. Like, once you start wearing a shoe that your foot can actually breathe, and let's say it swells a little bit, at least you have room in there. You start walking around on something that literally is like, of course your foot's gonna hurt. That looks like it hurts.
I remember the first time I put my foot into an Ultra, it was at OR 2013, I want to say. It was like the second or third model of Lone Peak at that point. They were pretty young. It was like Cinderella slipper. It was love at first sight.
Yeah.
Like, I'd never been in a trail runner that felt that comfortable. And not only the wide toe box, but like I just have wide feet in general. And like that was the first time where I remember the Brooks Cascadia were all the rage when I first got into thru hiking, and like the first time I put that on, I felt like my foot was in prison. The things that were popular back then, I'm glad that it's shifting in this direction because it just never worked for me.
Once you start, and here's the other thing, your foot will get bigger. If you did a bunch of bicep curls, you would expect your bicep to get bigger. When you start strengthening your foot gets bigger.
Is that why thru hiker feet? I always thought it was like swelling or like expanding, but I guess that makes more sense that your feet get so strong after a thru hike that's why you grow like half a size or a size or.
Yeah. I had never considered that.
Me either.
People always talk about losing the arch and then like your foot flattening out and just consuming more real estate.
That's really bad, isn't it?
Some of the strongest feet I've ever seen have technically flat arches.
Okay.
Because they just have this big, robust, wide foot. So that whole like my foot's flat is flat feet do not mean that you need an orthotic and you need all of this support. It's more of what can your foot do. I don't care what it looks like, right? Is it strong? And just because someone told you it was flat, because most people, that's what they'll be like, oh my gosh, your feet are so flat, you have to need all this stuff.
What about arch collapse? Like if you previously had an arch, and what does that even mean?
So when we think of the foot, when it strikes the ground, the foot has to pronate. And that's when the foot lengthens and widens, and it's our first opportunity for shock absorption. Then it has to recoil or get, it changes position. So that arch recoil, the arch doing this, is something we want and we need. So when we try to block that motion, or eliminate arch recoil, you're inherently making a foot that's going to get weaker.
Okay.
So when you have a foot that doesn't change shape, so it'll stay in more of a collapsed position, and these people can't, tent their foot, or they can't toe yoga, or they've lost function, then you got to say, hey, time out here. We have to really focus on getting your foot stronger.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean go get an orthotic and go get a shoe that's going to continue to, do all the work for you. It means, get stronger.
Is then conceivably backpacking bad for your arch health just because?
I think it's great for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, kind of another big thing, people that aren't backpacking, they're rucking everywhere, and they're putting and it's like, okay, well, we know that you have 4 times your body weight going through your Achilles tendon, and now you're going to add on another 40 pounds. Awesome. It's like more load. You just better be able to handle it.
Yeah. Just don't increase it before you've worked up to it. That kind of leads me to another question that I feel like we did kind of answer, but do you have a recommendation for a regimen if somebody was going to switch from like a 5mm drop to a 0 drop? Would you say make sure you get X amount of miles in with weight on your back before you leave on like a thru hike? Because I know a lot of people, they think about switching shoes, but they're too afraid to introduce a problem before they go on like this 5-month trip.
Yeah, you don't want to, this isn't like, hey, I'm going to switch shoes and then go leave next week. It's like off-season stuff.
And it's always injury town when they do that.
It's like, take
Prep
the time.
first.
Yes.
And would you say there's this, I know it's hard to standardize, I would imagine, but is there a ballpark of an amount of time someone should spend in a shoe before they decide to go through hike in it? I know that's
tough.
a very pointed question.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Always go, I think go with feel, right? Like how does the shoe feel? Make sure it's comfortable, right? And then assess how you feel that night and the next morning, like we talked about, and if your foot feels fatigued or achy, you need to put some work in.
Yeah.
So if someone's not local here to Lakewood, Colorado, and they want to work with your clinic, do you work with people remotely?
Yeah. So here in Lakewood, Total Health Solutions, that's kind of my brick and mortar. So we have 4 docs in there and a PT. So I only see lower extremity patients at this point in the game. And then I also have Gait Happens, which is online, all virtual work.
Okay.
So we have, I think there's 7 virtual practitioners now. So it's been really, really cool because we've been able to really help people all over the globe. COVID was that's when things kind of blew up because everybody was like, oh, my feet hurt because I've been walking around barefoot at home. And so therefore I must never take my shoes off. And I'm like, no, again, it's not the fact that you don't wearing shoes, it's the fact that your foot's weak, which was really interesting to see where that went, right? Because it was like everyone panicked and they're like, we can never take our shoes off. And I'm like, no, that's not what it's telling us. It's telling us that our feet are really weak.
Yeah.
It's one of those cases of like, right introduction, like there's something wrong with my feet, wrong conclusion.
Yes, totally.
I imagine the majority of people that you work with are trying to overcome acute injuries. Would you recommend someone go to your clinic if they wanted to train their foot for a long distance? Like if they didn't have any?
Those are my favorite. I mean, I love all my patients, right? But when you have someone that's like really, they know what they want to do, right? Like I want to be running, I want to be hiking, and I know that this is something that I need to pay attention to. It's fun because it's like we'll test their toe strength. We'll look at single leg calf raise. We'll look at balance. We look at capacity. And then it's fun because it's like, this is your baseline. This is the opportunity that we have. And let's say you're crushing it out there, but you have, you're crushing it without using your foot and ankle. Imagine how much you're going to crush it once you get stronger from the ground up. So it's fun.
Yeah. And this is a total change of gears, but at least if I could get your assistance, we're going to do you haven't even been around for this. So inside that backpack there, at least if you wouldn't mind grabbing that off the shelf, there's a bunch of lotto balls.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. With truly the most random questions. You might want to take the headphones off.
Yep.
If you just grab one of the balls out there, open it up like a fortune cookie. Shout out to our sponsor, Gossamer Gear. Use code SnuggleBug for 20% off shelters at gossamergear.com. This is for our guest here.
Should I open it and hand it to her? Or should I
Sure.
just- All right. We're opening the gumball machine. What is the cheesiest pickup line you've ever heard or used? I hope we get a foot themed one.
Oh my gosh. Well, I am in the foot world. So it can get pretty gnarly.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. My mind didn't go there yet until you had mentioned that. Dang.
I'm nervous.
I know. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this. So yes, we have a pretty large social media account. So, you can't keep all the foot fetish people away. So we will get comments. One of our favorites was, "I would like to lick your bunions."
Oh man, I wasn't expecting that question to elicit such a good answer, but that is a great answer.
Yes, it is shocking.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can only imagine.
Do you ever get messages asking to buy people's feet pics from your Instagram?
Oh yes. You name it, we have probably seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you ever need to tap into a new revenue source.
Yeah. You've already got the audience built in.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Courtney Conley, thank you so much for joining us here on Backpacker Radio. Before we wrap, is there anything else that you want to plug? We got the websites.
I think that was great.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks.
To the Trek propaganda portion of today's show. Got a couple of fun ones for you here. The first is, for anyone that loves long-distance backpacking, it looks like there's going to be a new trail in the works. This is by our managing editor and former guest, Kelly Floro. The title is Driftless Hiking Trail. New funding package is big win for Minnesota Long Trail. Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz has greenlit a $425,000 for the Minnesota Driftless Hiking Trail, a new long-distance trail project. This funding is essential for hiring staff and getting equipment, which will help secure trail routes through private properties. Coordinated by Marty Walsh, maybe a future guest, the trail is set to stretch over 100 miles through southeastern Minnesota with the support of more than 20 private landowners. The goal is to have it completed by 2027, and at least 3 miles should be ready by the summer. So if someone wants to get a head start, there's a section waiting for you in just a few months. Head on over to the link in the show notes to get the full story there. And there's another article I want to highlight. This is by a writer/blogger, very popular blogger for the Trek. That is Madison Blagden, aka Pegleg. Title is Pegleg: 7 Gear Items I Ditched to Cut My Base Weight in Half. I obviously want you guys to read the full article, so I'll just highlight a couple ones that I found interesting from the article. Is number 3, she mentions that she ditches her multi-tool, but what I found especially interesting is that she uses a sub 1 ounce box cutter. She noticed that the only thing that she used in her multi-tool was the knife or the scissors, so she just wanted something sharp. And a fellow hiker pointed out to her that you could accomplish this with a box cutter, and apparently there are box cutters that are light enough that are sub 1 ounce. The other one that she mentioned is she ditched her pack cover, which is common in the thru-hiking world, but I feel like most people use the trash compactor bags as pack liners. She mentioned that she uses just a polycro bag liner for her pack. So if you want a few more ideas on how you can shave your pack weight, head on over to this article. And also shout out to Pegleg. She's hiking the CDT right now. And if the stars align, we will get her on the podcast as she is hiking through. Okay. Question of the day. I'm just assuming this is a Chance submission. This isn't yours, is it?
I know.
Okay. Question of the day. If you were a vegetable, what vegetable would you be?
You know what's funny is I've been thinking about, I'm like, I need to submit more of these because I feel like these things pop into my head and I just forget to send them to the group text.
Samesies.
But I love how Chance's mind works. I feel like she's always got something going.
Her best one's always coming at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
That's where all of her good work comes from while I'm asleep.
Mm-hmm. I guess I can go first. Personally, I think I was thinking about this, and there's a lot of different ways you could shake it, but I think I would be a Brussels sprout because when I was younger, I didn't like them that much, but they really grew on me. Yeah. And I think I've had a similar journey with my self-confidence,
nice.
Which is I'm making it a little deep, but
sentimental. I love that.
Yeah, and also I feel like there's so many ways you can enjoy Brussels sprouts. But
What's
there
your
are
go-to
like,
preparation?
I feel like I bake them a lot and just like in olive oil and like salt or spices of some kind. We do a lot of sheet pans with Brussels sprouts. I do feel like they thrive in like certain ways. Like if I love like restaurant Brussels sprouts that have like balsamic and like bacon bits in them.
Sure.
And so I feel like me in the mountains is like me at a restaurant, like Brussels sprouts at a restaurant with balsamic and vinegar and bacon bits. Like if you put me in the right environment, I can be very delicious.
Yeah.
But if you boil me, gross. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, Brussels sprouts definitely need a little work to be good because, just I feel like probably most vegetables just straight up boiled are not going to be super palatable.
I guess that's a good point. You also really don't want to eat, like I've never tried a Brussels sprout raw, but there are certain vegetables that are great raw.
Yeah. I bet that you have because they're popular in salads.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, shredded.
And
like,
yeah. We have a Cuisinart and we recently did, we used the proper extension to like chop them up real fine. And yeah, they're good.
Yeah, so I guess I can be handled raw as well.
Polly, you know what to do with that one. Wow, I've never seen.
Oh my
Sean's
God,
gonna be so happy that for once it wasn't her.
Oh man.
I had to pause for comedic effect there. If I was a vegetable, I would probably just be like romaine lettuce. I'm just always there, and I don't really know why.
It's depressing.
But I feel like it's on everything. It's on every sandwich. It's on burgers.
Yeah.
Doesn't actually provide
adds some
anything.
nice texture.
Sure. It's mostly just water and fiber.
Yeah.
No nutrition whatsoever.
Fiber's important though.
That's true. Gotta have some solid dookies.
Also very prone to foodborne illnesses, isn't it?
I think.
Or is that iceberg?
I didn't know that one lettuce was worse than another.
I
thought it was all
just lettuces.
like raw produce.
Okay.
Actually accounts for a huge amount of foodborne illness.
Yeah.
From what I know.
No offense.
Yeah. Triple Crown. This one we've put off multiple times, Chance and I, because we'll be here preparing for the podcast and realizing we haven't actually prepared for this Triple Crown, but we're going to do it today. Elise said that she was thinking hard and deep on this.
I was trying
on the entire ride down from Summit County.
Yeah.
We're going to do it. This is the Triple Crown of things that are true, but I'm not buying it.
I think it's a brilliant Triple Crown because as soon as I read it, I got excited. But it is hard to conjure these things out of thin air.
All of the Triple Crowns are reverse engineered on just something that catches our attention or like a light bulb goes off. So I actually came up with this one because I guess I'll go first. This is my first one.
Do it.
The fact that it takes an orange peel 6 months to decompose just does not calculate to me. Like I feel like anything that is natural and of this world is going to break down quickly. I was one of those that like I had to have the research presented to me to feel that you shouldn't just be able to throw whatever fruit you wanted off the trail because it's natural. But the fact that it takes a half year for it to even start to remotely break down is true, but I'm not buying it.
Yeah. And 2 years, I think, in certain environments. Like I've heard in the desert, it can be up to 2 years.
Yeah. That's crazy to me.
But yeah, I get where, and I've seen them. That's what convinced me is I've seen like old orange peels. You can tell they're like all dried out, but they're still there.
I wonder what it is about orange peels in particular. I guess that's true for other peels and like organic compost.
I think it's more so just that they don't belong there than it is that it takes that long. Like, yeah, a lot of organic matter probably takes, I would assume, a long time because you see leaves from previous seasons and stuff, but
that's true.
They're supposed to be there.
Yeah, how long does a avocado shell peel? I don't even know what you call.
Oh, probably longer than an orange, I would think.
Yeah.
They feel more, I don't know, more like durable, almost like that waxy. I guess the orange peel has the waxy exterior as well, but
avocado skins and seeds decompose at a slower rate. Several months. That's all I got.
Several months. So probably similar.
Yeah.
Similar timelines. We should start experiment. I guess if you had like a compost bin, that wouldn't be a good way to tell because that's accelerating the.
We just need like a petri dish out on the table out here.
Yeah.
I actually do have an orange in my backpack, so we could start the process now.
just make it the centerpiece of the studio table for up to 2 years, maybe.
I think I'm getting some clicking from the phone.
Is it my phone? Oh,
There
sorry.
you go. Oh, you're good. Okay. What's your first thing that is true, but you're not buying it?
Oh, I had a lot of different ideas. Some of them started to lean like very divisive. So I tried to weed those out.
It is an election year.
Yeah. So I'll start with like a more mild one, but that the idea that DEET isn't cancer causing or isn't that bad for you.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, I made a video and I wrongly included that DEET can cause cancer, and I corrected myself in the comments. I think I even deleted it in some spots, but I like grew up with my dad being like, just be careful with it. Like you don't overdo it and wash it off after, because I guess that study came out around when I was a kid, and where that came from was like a Swedish study that I think they were testing particularly like testicular cancer, if I remember correctly, because I looked it up after a few people called me out and they were like, there's no proof of that. And basically what I found is that this study was ruled inconclusive.
Okay.
So basically there wasn't enough, like a large enough test group to determine that the results meant that DEET caused cancer.
Okay.
So for me, I'm like, to me, that doesn't say the DEET is safe.
Sure.
To me, that says they don't know.
Right.
And it wasn't enough to say that it for sure caused cancer. And when I see it, like, I think you guys have talked about this recently, when I see it like melt my gear and like melt through its own bottle sometimes, I'm like, yeah, I'm just...
What is it doing to my skin?
yeah, I don't know if I really want to put that, even though there's no like conclusive evidence.
Right.
I'm not buying it.
Yeah. That's a good one, because I am of the mindset I avoid heavy concentrations of DEET unless it's absolutely necessary. And if you're in like a thick, dense cloud of mosquitoes, then DEET is necessary. I won't say it's great, because I feel like when I apply that heavier concentration, it always makes me feel off.
Yeah.
And maybe that is placebo. I can't say for a fact that it's not, but the first time that I experienced this, I wasn't expecting that to be the case. Like I wasn't expecting this to be a harsh chemical that was going to make me feel bad. I just noticed that it did.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
I don't know. Maybe something that I ate timed up with the application of it, and I'm correlating the wrong things. I don't know. But yeah, I personally just avoid it when I can.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
That's a good one. What do you got next?
Oh yeah, it's snake draft.
Snake draft.
Oh gosh. I feel like with cults, you always hear people say that like anyone can get sucked in, and I believe that like on a surface level. I'm not, and I don't want this to come across like victim blamey for anyone who has had the unfortunate experience of dealing with a cult. But I think that's like one of those things that's easy for everyone to be like, yeah, that's true, but I'm not buying it. Like, I don't know that I believe that I would be able to be sucked into a cult, but I'm not special. Like, I can keep circulating that logic for a long time.
Sure. I think I don't know any actual research on cults. I'm sure that a lot exists, but from what I understand is was the 12 tribes is prominent on at least the AT. I think I've heard recently that they were maybe somewhere on the PCT as well. I can't remember. But they tend to have good success with thru-hikers because they prey on people who are generally lost in life.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for an answer, you're way more prone to be pulled into that sort of a community where you found a community that people that care about you, and there's shared values and whatever it might be. But I would imagine that there's certain personalities.
That's what I feel like, there's certain precursors that definitely make you more vulnerable.
Yeah.
But I feel like I've heard people say, like, and maybe this isn't known to be true then, so it doesn't count, but that it can happen to anyone.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me, I think this is true, please someone fact check this, but the probability of you being successfully hypnotized is increased dramatically if you believe that it can work.
Yeah, which doesn't make it not real, right? So it just...
Yeah, but it makes you wonder, is this a placebo effect? I don't know.
Yeah.
there's probably good research on hypnotism and the effects, but if you are resistant to it, you're less likely to be under its spell.
Yeah, I would imagine that's probably true with cults too.
Yeah.
If
I
you're
agree.
keeping an, I read a book recently called Cultish, a language of fanaticism. And it's about like the language that cults use, and it just was. I think it brought that up for me because there's a lot of very smart people that she talks about in the book, and you're just like, you wouldn't think this person would have been susceptible, but they were.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, my favorite thing about making baseless claims on this podcast is we have a lot of smart listeners. So if somebody is well schooled in any of the subjects, they'll definitely let us know, and we always appreciate it. Podcast at thetrek.co.
Yeah, I can't wait for everybody to tell me that DEET does not cause cancer. It's already happened once, so I'm ready.
Yeah. I'm sure. Okay, my next one is. This is a little bit of a mind blower. Reno, Nevada, is further west than San Diego, California.
I feel like I learned this on a trivia night recently. They were like, what's the furthest west capital of the United States or something? And I think is it Reno?
I feel like Sacramento's got to be west of...
Oh, okay. I don't know the capitals, obviously. But yeah, that is... I wouldn't...
Yeah.
Even in my head, I'm trying to picture that, and it doesn't seem real.
Because San Diego's on the Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
Reno has an entire state to the west of it. The fact that it is to the west, that's just people who study maps would be the only ones that know that, because intuitively that does not make sense.
I wonder if it looks like that on a map. Is that due to that, whatever that effect is, that maps aren't...
That's true.
Visually accurate?
I haven't actually looked at the, is that longitude? The longitude of, let's see, longitude...
I'm looking at it.
Is Reno west of San Diego?
Like, does it even...
Yes. Okay. According to Quora, it is.
I guess you can kind of, if you drew a line on like this, I'm looking at like a preschool version of a United States map.
Yeah.
If you drew a line down from Reno, it does look like it would just barely like go into the ocean. So it is somewhat visually accurate too, even.
I'm getting mixed results on the initial Google search, but one person says on Quora, no, Reno is north of San Diego.
I mean, yes, but
yeah, we're gonna go with it. I don't want to look into it any further,
cool.
But yeah, Reno is west of San Diego, at least on a map.
That was another reason I struggled with this one, because I was like, what do we mean by true? Do we mean like generally accepted by most people, or?
Like most Triple Crowns with Chauncey and I, we have very different interpretations.
Yeah.
So as long as we're answering it to our truest sense, then it is in line.
Nice.
I guess I have two. This one is, I couldn't believe this. This was an internet search when preparing for this. Mm-hmm. This is something that you feel like a stupid person says to you, and there's just no way it can be true. And it's that if you hold in your farts long enough, it will be released as a burp eventually. Apparently that is true. Apparently that is true.
How does it travel past
I don't have the full
everything?
Scientific explanation, but the gas can be reabsorbed and come out of your mouth.
Okay, so it's not like it travels back up the same pipeline.
No.
It's like reabsorbed into the body.
It's not like you're burping out a fart, because that would be pretty gross.
Yeah.
But the same gas that would have come out as a fart is just doing a ping pong in your intestines.
That kind of does make sense to me, actually. Have I ever talked about how I didn't used to be able to burp?
This sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't know if this is something said in a road trip or
probably
on the podcast.
A road trip and probably not a podcast. I'll try and keep it short. For years, I could not burp, and so I was just farting instead, I'm assuming.
That's awesome.
I think, String Bean, who I'm assuming a lot of listeners will be familiar with, he's an ultra runner, and he had the same problem, and that was the first time I'd ever seen that it was like a
Someone
thing.
like me, yeah.
I just thought I guess I just never thought about it that deeply and lived my life pretty normally, not being able to burp. And he posted about it, and you can get like Botox in your throat to fix it. And he did that procedure so that he could, not have to deal with all the gas as uncomfortably. But I think I was cured by literally hiking the CDT. I think
just the amount of processed food forced you.
The amount of processed food and the amount of pressure being above 10,000 feet for so long. Because basically what the Botox does is it like from my understanding, I'm not a medical professional, it like freezes the muscles, I'm assuming, that like are responsible for burping, so that they can, or like muscles nearby, so that you learn.
It relaxes them.
Yeah, and basically allows your body to learn to burp, because it's like a mechanism. And if you just like didn't, I don't know, somehow lost that ability, you need to relearn how to do it. And so the Botox like prompts that.
Yeah.
And I think what happened is I just had like so much pressure inside my body, like, I don't know, existing at 10,000 feet for like a couple months, that it forced it out, and then my body relearned the mechanism. So now I can burp. That's totally like anecdotal theory, but
no, that is interesting.
Yeah, so
no one would ever assume that through hiking a trail could
cure a medical ill.
Yeah. Can you burp on command?
No.
But
only
if you have a lot of carbonated beverages,
yeah,
you can work it out.
It can yeah.
Have you had any like real meaty boys, like a heavy Homer Simpson belch?
A few decent ones, but I wouldn't say any that are like on the level that most people would think of.
Yeah.
With that.
What was your first, like, what was the first belch? What did that feel like for you?
It felt great. Like, you know how you kind of get nauseous when you have to burp sometimes? Like, I get nauseous when I have a lot of gas, and it was just like instant relief. And then I looked around to like my trail family, I'm pretty sure, and I was like, oh my God. And now, like, one of my trail family members, he still like cheers for me every time I burp when he's around.
Did your parents ever comment on your lack of belching?
I think I burped as a kid.
Okay.
So I need to ask my mom. I keep thinking about it and then forgetting when I visit home and stuff. But I'm pretty sure I did burp like as a baby. But I did have like stomach issues also as like a young kid. I remember like my parents going to the doctor and being like, her stomach always hurts. And them being like, don't eat so many. I think the way my like 5-year-old brain digested it was like, I need to eat meat with my spaghetti. Like, I can't just eat spaghetti. I don't know what that feedback actually was, but
okay.
Yeah, anyway.
I wonder if we could eventually do a triple crown of things that Botox can do other than just make you seem younger, because
it can kill you.
It can cure your belches apparently. Also, people with migraines apparently can get Botox injections, and that can be helpful. I actually looked into that.
Like grinding your teeth, I think it can keep you from doing that. I think I've heard.
All right.
Like TMJ, like it can help with TMJ. I think, which is probably.
Do you have
migraine.
any others? Because my migraine was the only fun
It just makes me think of like how it comes from botulism. And my cousin, this is another short tangent, I promise. He like was cleaning ducks one time and got like botulism and ended up in the hospital. So it can be very scary if it's like the uncontrolled real life kind, like where they get it from.
It comes from ducks?
I think it comes from botulism, right? Like oh no, I'm saying things that I don't know.
The words are similar. I learned something about Botox.
I think botulism is like it's a rare but serious condition caused by a toxin that attacks the body's nerves.
Ducts, not quack,
yeah,
quack.
sorry. No, duck, quack, quack. He was cleaning ducks that he had hunted and got botulism, which I thought was the same. It like has the same I thought they got Botox from the same thing that causes botulism, but maybe I'm making things up.
Wow. We're going on a deep and strange tangent.
Does Botox come from botulism? The medicine Botox injections is made from the same toxin that causes a type of food poisoning called botulism.
Wow.
So, yeah. Anyway.
I didn't expect this Botox.
He because it can paralyze like your whole, you stop breathing on your own and stuff.
Yeah. Did I do 3? I did 3.
Did you?
I did orange peel. Doesn't make sense to me. Reno.
Oh yeah.
And then farts during burps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a few like random ones. Let's see. What do I want to? Oh, this one's weird. That your ovaries are not connected to your fallopian tubes.
You lost
and
me.
that like
female anatomy.
Yes. So when a an egg is released,
Yeah.
it like travels along the fallopian tubes towards your ovaries, but like there's not an actual connection between the ovaries and the fallopian tubes. It's just like I don't know how to describe it in a medical way.
It's
but
just
like,
floating through.
It's just like floating through like body space.
Blood ether. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's like some fibers that come off the fallopian tube, so it's kind of like little tethers that kind of like, but like they're not connected.
Yeah.
They're just in proximity, and that's how like I think that's how like ectopic pregnancies can happen, because they don't. Would that make sense? I don't know. I'm getting way too far into talking about medical things I have no business talking about. But yeah, they're not connected. I do know that.
Okay. I would.
And I remember the first time I learned that was probably like a year ago, and went my whole life not understanding that.
Yeah. Blowing minds, including mine. I learned so much about the female anatomy right there as well. That was 3, right? Did you have any other? You said you had a few random ones. Did you have any other honorable mentions you wanted to throw out there?
Let's see. Oh, because I was driving, one thing that I feel like is worth an honorable mention is that we just do one driving test and then that's it. Like, and we're just like,
it is
released
crazy.
into the wild.
Yeah. I don't know if I took heat for it, but some Triple Crown solicited the fact that I said that old people should have to take a driving test again.
I think we all should.
Yeah.
Or there should be some form of like continuing education.
I think multiple tests is important. I think most of my driving experiences that arouse anger, oftentimes there's somebody behind the wheel who hasn't had a driving test in probably 50 years.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it's just... There's also so much disagreement, I think, about like what's the appropriate way to do certain things, like when a problem comes up, and it's like if we had more education that in a central place, like zipper merging. I know that's like supposed to be definitely more efficient, but I feel like people don't talk about it. That I don't know.
No, like, that's a really, I don't even know how we're on this subject, but that's a good one, because there's a merging lane going to my house from this office, and people merge way too early before the lanes are actually combining, and it creates unnecessary traffic, and then you feel like you're the asshole if you do it correctly, because you're literally driving past people that are merging prematurely.
Totally. And I feel like in other cases, I feel like I was raised being told basically that if you see you need to get over, you should get over, because you might not be able to, or you might, whatever. But
I feel like if there's not a sign where the lanes are indicating that you should merge, keep going until that point happens. But if there's like a car broken down in one lane,
that's a good point.
Then you just get over whenever you can. Yeah. Very context dependent. Sweet. Well, that's our Triple Crown of things that are true, but I'm not buying it. Oh, you had a, would you say impulsive thing of the week?
Yeah. So I don't usually have free weekends these days anymore, because I picked up a bartending job, and I'm randomly off this weekend, and I am scheduled to do a 16-mile long run, and my friend is running the Leadville Marathon, and so I
the full 100 or the marathon?
The marathon.
Okay.
The 26.2, but it's a trail marathon, and it's like one of the hardest marathons in the country or something. Because
does that still go up Hope Pass?
It goes up Mosquito Pass.
Okay.
And then up, I forget what the other section of the marathon is, but I impulsively signed up for the wait list for the heavy half, because I have a 60-mile trail run, and the heavy half was like 15.4. And I got off the wait list basically, so I can register now for the heavy half, and so I think I'm running the Leadville heavy half this weekend.
This weekend, holy smokes!
Yeah.
How much gain?
Which, like 3,400 feet.
Eee.
Yeah, and it goes up to 13.1, so it's probably all, I'm assuming with the math, that's got to be like mostly above 10,000 feet the whole run.
I mean, I think Leadville is
mostly
at 10,000 feet basically.
Yeah, so I think I'm doing it. I'm scared. I'm afraid I'm gonna like people keep being like, what's the worst that can happen? And I'm like, I puke and I DNF. And that doesn't sound fun.
Do you have a time goal? Because I know for a lot of the ultra marathons, like when people go up Hope Pass or whatever it might be, that their goal is just to like hike the
I imagine I'll be
inclines.
walking/hiking a lot. And I don't know, I did a 14-mile trail run this past weekend, and I hiked a lot of the uphill because it was pretty like the first 5 miles were like relatively steep, and I did it like my overall pace was like 13:30. And so I honestly just want to finish it. And not like let myself get competitive and then like start puking.
Sure. But I feel like this is in the realm of both your backpacking and your training, right? Like, I'm sure you'll do great.
It's the distance I'm supposed to do. It's just probably higher and more gain than I would have chosen as like
3,400 feet over 13 miles is crazy.
And like my ultra is going to be 4,200 feet over 31. So it's like, it's just more than what but I don't know. I'm just going to, they let you self-seed your pace. So I'm going to self-seed in like the second to last group, I think. And I think the cutoff's like 6 hours. So the math on that, like as long as I do 3 miles an hour, I can finish. And I'm like, I can hike that.
Yeah.
3 miles an hour is fast for me. I'm not like typically that fast of a hiker, but
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of downhill, but that can also backfire if it's steep
slow
enough.
And it might be, I feel like there's going to be snow at 13.1.
Yeah, you live in the mountains. What's the report right now?
I went up to 10.7 on that run last weekend, and there was snow. But I'd been talking to a few CDT hikers, and they're definitely still dealing with snow. So I haven't been up higher than 10.7, I don't think, actually. I just keep avoiding, because I'm like, until somebody tells me it's melted, I'm just going to wait.
What's it like? How long was the adjustment to be able to run at 10,000 feet or whatever, 9,000 feet? You sleep at what?
I sleep at like 9.1, I think.
Yeah.
And run around like 9.2 to 9.5 mostly. I think, well, when I first started, it like took forever. Like my last summer is when I first started like actually running up there. And I remember it took a while to be able to run a full mile. But now it feels, I think acclimating by just like existing up there has definitely taken effect.
Yeah.
And when I started training this time, I feel like I started off being able to run like 2 miles without stopping. And then now like I still walk up hills on my 5-mile run sometimes.
Sure.
So.
I do remember back on the Ice Age Trail, somehow we both lost odds that we had to race a mile. And I'm not saying this to brag. I beat you.
Yeah.
And I'm positive now that you would destroy me in any distance of a run.
I don't know. You're fast. I see your Strava. You're fast.
But I'm also running at 5,000 less feet than you. So I guess that's part of my question is, have you tried running at Denver elevation since doing all this 10,000 mile?
No, I haven't. Well, I did one of my first long runs in Missouri, and that I was able to run like 10 miles without stopping really at all. So that felt good. And I think my pace was pretty decent. I don't remember exactly. It was probably like around 11-minute miles, which I feel like is fast. That's fast for me trail running. And then I will say, even when I run like flat stuff now, like before everything was melted in April, I was training mostly like on the Riverwalk where I live, which is like 85 feet a gain for 5 miles. And I can run that now without stopping, like 10-minute pace, 10, 15 maybe, like probably is the last time I tried it. It was not. Maybe that's even aggressive. Maybe like let's say 10:30 pace is probably more realistic. But
I mean, that's awesome. Like when I'm in Summit County or in the mountains in general, I feel like I get winded walking upstairs.
Oh, I do too sometimes still. And I don't know what the deal. I read the things that are speaking of the Triple Crown. I read one time that like something about the aerobics of the way stairs are, you like always get winded or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I probably made that up.
Yeah. Well, sweet. You'll have to report back and let us know how the half goes.
If I don't die, I will be happy to.
When is your ultra?
It's end of September. So still got a while.
And what race is that?
It's the Westline Winder in BV. I don't like to say the full name because I feel like I say
Buena
it
Vista.
wrong.
You say it the correct Spanish way.
Yeah, I say Buena Vista, but I know that's not right in Colorado, but yeah, end of September. I couldn't find it really that easily on the ultra list, so try Googling it if you're interested.
BV is a cool town. That'll be fun, aside from the running part. How
We'll
long is
see.
that one?
It's like 30, maybe it's like 30.6 or something.
So 50K?
50K,
Yeah, sweet. Cool. What else we have here? I have a quick 1-minute gear review, and this is very fitting given today's guest is she mentioned the Topo Footwear. I actually recently was sent a pair to test, and the first time I put them on my feet was to do a 12-mile hike. I'll get to the origins of that in a second, but it not only was it a 12-mile hike, it was very rocky for anyone that's done the Beaver Brook Trail here in Golden, and a lot of gain. I want to say it was over 3,000 feet over the 12 miles, and my feet held up beautifully. That's a stupid thing. You should never be using a pair of footwear for the first time on something like that. You should ease into it a little bit, even if you've used conceptually similar footwear. I feel like you just don't know until you have tested a little bit, and I'm very happy to report that they worked awesome. So I'm excited. I think I'm going to be using these on the backpacking trip that I'm doing next month, which I don't think I've talked about. I'm planning on doing a loop in the Sawtooths.
Nice.
Yeah.
The Sawtooth Wilderness Loop?
There's a few different versions. I haven't
Okay.
settled on which one, but
Sweet.
roughly speaking, it will be something like that. There's the Sawtooth Wilderness Loop, the Grand Sawtooth Loop, and then
Okay.
people do variations of both of those. I'm still trying to decide exactly what I'm going to do, but yeah,
Neat.
that. So yeah, excited to report back how those hold up, because I've been in either ultras or Hokas exclusively since 2014, I want to say. So it's nice to get a new brand in the rotation, and initial impressions were positive. But the 12-mile hike that I did is, I have this idea. I want to do what I'm dubbing the Golden Ale Trail, and this is just a way to blend my alcoholism with my love of hiking. It's going to start in Golden. I haven't decided if it starts with a beer or not. I feel like starting with a beer and then going on a long hike doesn't always end well, but for the purposes of theorizing this,
I think it has to.
yeah, I mean, if you're going to call it the Golden Ale Trail. And then my vision of this is going to end in Evergreen. I haven't totally mapped it out, but the version that I did was 12 miles into Genesee. Genesee's pretty close to Evergreen. I think you just add another few miles maybe. I have to get the specific route, and I want to connect it to the Evergreen Brewery. I was also theorizing potentially reaching out to them to see if they wanted to do like a Golden Ale Trail ale, and maybe get like a portion of the money to the CDTC or whatever it might be. So yeah.
That'd be sweet.
Oversharing right now, but that's my vision for this thing. This is all inspired by the Denver Orbital Trail. It just made me realize that like people invent things all the time, and I spend more time at a computer than I do on trails, so I should just start inventing stupid things to scratch my own curiosity. So that's what this is going to be.
It's so fun to play on Gaia
Yeah, absolutely it is.
or whatever app you use.
I've been was turned on to, I mean, not a small brand, All Trails. I've been playing with that a little bit more. Been into that, but yeah.
Can you like make routes on All Trails though, or is it more so like?
Yes, and I haven't
Okay.
actually designed the route on All Trails, but I know that because I got the All Trails GPX onto Onyx, which is what I've been using. So yeah, and they all play nicely that way.
Nice.
Mailbag. This is from Mike Hughes. Messages, hello, I've been attempting to get a sticker for a long time now and have had no luck. I've even gone back to almost every episode and collected all the sticker codes in an attempt to have AI write a backpacking story incorporating all of them, but that's turned out to be a bigger task than I thought. Lol. Maybe someday. Anyway, I love the podcast and I've listened to every minute of every episode. Wow, thank you. Even though I've never been able to make an official thru hike, I still dream of it one day and live vicariously through your interviews and stories. The closest I've come was my son and I section hiked the 200-mile Mason-Dixon Trail from Chadds Ford, PA through Delaware, Maryland, and back into Pennsylvania, meeting up with the AT near Boiling Springs. Thanks so much for your podcast and keep them coming. P.S. I love that you still put clips from It's Always Sunny at the end. I can't believe you still find ones that fit for the show. Shout out to our guy, Paulie. You are amazing at that. Attached is my 5-star poop review from 4 years ago. Thanks. You want to take this part?
Sure. 5 poop review with 5 poop emojis. 4 years ago. Floyd 75. I've binged my way through every episode and love them all. I'm not a thru hiker, just a day hiker who loves the outdoors and camping. I'd love to do some long hikes one day if time allows and my body stays healthy enough. I'm currently 44, working at UPS, and log up to 13 miles a day on my Fitbit, lugging heavy packages around. So hopefully that will condition me for a big hike in the future. For now, I just enjoy dreaming of it while I listen to your podcast. You two are great interviewers with lots of informative info and hilarious sense of humor. I even enjoyed the all-female episode. It had lots of interesting and honest info with loads of humor. I also enjoy when you get off topic and into side conversations on related to hiking. You keep it so personable and fun to listen to. I feel like I'm just hanging out in the room with you. Keep up the good work, and most importantly, keep the poop stories coming. I can't get enough of them.
You get to absorb all the compliments there.
Yeah, I'll take it.
For Chance. By the way, guys, Chance hasn't quit or been fired. She's traveling right now, so she'll be back. But
just filling in.
We're very happy to have Elise in the meantime. Another 5-star review, or are we saving this one? What was the plan of action here? That was a mailbag. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, 5-star review. Forgot different segments. If you guys want to have your mailbag read on this podcast at thetrek.co, or head to the link in the show notes. 5-star review, best way to make number 2 happen. This is from Cowboy Sloppy. On the recent Q&A episode, someone asked which brand of coffee is best for freeing up some space in the colon if constipated. My experience, did a multi-day trip through the Rangeley-Richardson Lakes in Maine. On the last day, we made Cowboy coffee and then ate the grounds. Never had a reaction so speedy in my life. Who eats coffee? Is that a thing? Do people eat coffee grounds?
I guess maybe for this purpose.
Okay.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I knew
before.
people like shot coffee into their assholes.
I know they like. I've seen people use it to like as an exfoliant.
Okay. You could do a whole triple crown of weird
Coffee
ways
uses.
to use coffee. Yeah. I'm guessing regardless of brand, if you want to eat some of your grounds, you're going to get where you want to be. We should look into this to see if this is a thing or if we just have a renegade who was acting wacky.
Do people eat coffee grounds?
I know I've told this story on the podcast before, but on my AT hike, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was
No.
reading I haven't thought about it this way, but people do include them in like recipes for sure. Like I've seen them in like cakes
That's
and
true.
stuff.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
on your AT through.
So maybe I'm the crazy one. I'll do the very Cliff Notes version. I got all the way to the Smokies without having any caffeine. I was using the AT as a way to like break myself from caffeine. I feel like once you get hiking, you're not as reliant on it as if compared to like just working from home.
Mm-hmm.
But I was having a moment in the Smokies and realized I needed caffeine to stay awake. It was like 5 p.m. and I just ripped open a packet of the Starbucks Via, like their instant coffee, and dumped that down my throat and chased it with a swig of water. And I got to the shelter and my body was so tired. The reason I took the coffee down because like I was basically having a panic attack and I just needed something to keep me alert enough so I could feel like I could get to the shelter. I'm completely exhausted. When I get to the shelter, my body just wants nothing more than to die and go to sleep. But the Starbucks Via, which is like, I think 200 milligrams of caffeine, effectively 2.5 cups of coffee, hits my system. So I slept like shit that night.
Yikes.
So yeah, I know the instant coffee
Oof.
is also consumable.
Yeah.
Don't recommend
Some
it.
people do like the Mio caffeine, like straight.
Yeah,
do you do that? I feel like I've seen you do it.
Jabba does it.
Okay.
I think I've done the version where like you'll take a gulp of water and then spray it into your mouth. But I feel like someone was on the podcast recently saying that they take straight shots of it.
I just can't. It's so concentrated. I can't.
Like, it can't be good for you.
It just and I'm trying to switch away from it because it has like food dye in it.
Yeah.
But just the concentration of it alone is too much for my fragile self.
Yeah. Don't have this in the show notes, but I promised this in a previous episode. I think the last episode. We got a question about what type of knee brace. So I'll read the question again. I know the main gear everyone loves and talks about, but do you guys have any recommendations on knee braces for long distance hiking? Most I've used just don't stay in place or up long or get very uncomfortable on long hikes. In the midst of the podcast, I texted former guest Dr. Morgan Brosnahan, and she responded saying, depends on what type of brace they need. For sleeves, OS first is pretty good for most people. I typically only use those and patella tendon straps because anything else is pretty sloppy. So that's from somebody who's much more educated on this stuff than me. Thank you to our Chuck Norris Award winners on Patreon. Are you ready to do Chauncey's part here?
I tried to study, actually, and it looks like Rachel actually added some of them. I think I can get those. I don't think I can get the other ones.
Okay, hold on. I was alerted that we were potentially missing somebody. So I'm going to add them to the list first. Thank you to Jillian Daniels. I don't know if she's been excluded from the mentions for a period of time, so I'm trying to make up for it. Jillian Daniels. Alex and Misty with Navigators Crafting. Andrew, Austin McDaniel, Austin Ford, Brad and Blair from 13 Adventures, Brent Stenberg, Brian Alsop. Fables. Christopher Marshburn, Coach from Marion Outdoors, Dane Ish, Derek Cook, Eric Casper, The Friendly Ghost.
I actually knew that one.
Eric Hoffman, Greg Knight, Greg McDaniel.
May you bring honor to his name.
Haley Buckingham.
Palace.
Jason Snaylor.
Baylor Noer.
Liz Seeger, Patrick Ciancialo, Sawyer Products, Spam, Timothy Hahn.
Solo.
And Tracy Trigger.
Fawns. That one I knew, but
yeah.
My voice didn't.
It's tough.
I wasn't warmed up enough.
It's tough to get to Chauncey's level of, I don't even know what you call that, vocal fry. Follow us at Backpacker Radio on Instagram and TikTok, at Backpacker Pod on X. Sorry, my headphones just cut out and that was weird for me. Facebook.com/Backpacker Radio. You can follow Elise
at Elise period ot on Instagram, Elise on YouTube. Elise just Elise on TikTok if you do that.
Are you TikToking?
Yes, but actually TikTok gets some like more unfiltered stuff just because there's not that many people over there sometimes.
Are you threadsing?
Not really.
I learned recently that apparently this is not a dead platform. I just assumed
people use it.
Yeah.
And honestly, the way they're getting me into it is by posting the little like suggestions on my Instagram feed. It gets me sometimes. I'll click on those.
Because the excerpt that they give you is always very juicy.
For sure.
Click. Yeah, that's the ultimate clickbait. Mm-hmm. If you guys want to check out my book, Appalachian Trials and Pacific Crest Trials, are available on Amazon. We'd be very grateful for a review. Subscribe and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you consume podcasts. Follow us on YouTube. What's up, YouTube? Thanks for watching. Definitely recommend today's episode via video because we were getting wonderful demonstrations, and Dr. Courtney brought out her wonderful array of footwear as well. Yep. That's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening, and happy hiking.
Bye.
Nice.